What if a husband's greed hid a secret that could destroy a family? A widow's inheritance becomes the battleground for a shocking betrayal. Losing my dad shattered me completely. Even now, 3 years later, the wounds haven't healed. Every time I walk into the house, I still expect to hear his voice or see him smiling at me. He was just 62 when he left us. People often say that time heals all wounds, but for me, time has only deepened the pain. This grief has seeped into my marriage too. Just the other day, my husband and I had a huge fight. Sometimes, I find myself wishing my dad were still alive, not only because I miss him but also because everything has gotten worse since he passed. The farmhouse felt eerily quiet, its pale walls reflecting the stillness of the surrounding fields. Even after 3 years, the pain of my dad's death clung to every corner. At 35, I carried my grief visibly. My medium-dark skin looked weary, my once lively brown hair was now often matted with tears, and my trembling hands clutched his photograph as if it were my lifeline. "I miss you so much," I whispered through broken sobs. The cattle grazing outside reminded me of his love for the farm, each lowing echoing through the quiet night, making me feel his absence all over again. My brother stood beside me, solid and comforting. Since our mother died 4 years before, he'd been my only steady support. The farmhouse walls seemed to creak with unspoken pain, and even the chandelier above seemed dim with grief. Meanwhile, my husband watched from a distance. His once loving gaze had turned cold, his fair skin taut with tension. He looked at me not with empathy, but as if he were waiting for me to move on, oblivious to the gaping hole in my heart. When Dad passed, we discovered he had left behind quite a fortune: trucks, cattle, cocoa farms, houses, and large sums of cash. It was overwhelming. I inherited GHC 275,000, 2 houses, plots of land, and multiple farms. My eyes widened as the lawyer read the will aloud. My brother, who had always been meticulous, agreed to manage the cattle business with me. Despite our unity, tensions started bubbling among relatives who felt entitled to a share. The farmhouse, once a place of warmth, now felt like a courtroom. My husband stood nearby in a crisp gray suit, his fair skin almost glowing with eagerness. He asked casually, "So, what's the plan now?" But beneath his smooth tone, I felt a lurking hunger. We eventually sold some cars, the money flowing in like a flood, each dollar a silent echo of my father's absence. My husband's smiles during this period were sharp, almost predatory, hinting at a secret desire that he hid behind supportive words. 2 years before, my husband had quit his job. He convinced me it was for a big business dream, and I supported him, even using my savings to keep him afloat. "It'll work out," he had assured me confidently. Back then, I believed in us. But now, with my inheritance on the table, he suggested we use half of it to invest in his business and 30% for another project. His eyes sparkled with excitement, but to me, they looked greedy. I hesitated. My face, already weary from grief, tightened with worry. "I need some time to think," I murmured. He didn't accept that easily. Every day, he pressed me harder, each night turning into another argument. His pushiness started to reveal another layer of his character that I hadn't seen before, a man willing to exploit my pain for his gain. The hidden debts and losses he carried slowly began to show, and I realized he wasn't the partner I thought he was. Every morning became a routine of tension. He'd get up looking tired and agitated, his suit crumpled, demanding answers about the money. "What are you waiting for?" he would snap. Meanwhile, I had quietly put the inheritance into treasury bills to protect it, hoping it would also preserve my sanity. "It's meant for the farms," I'd reply firmly, though my voice sometimes shook under the weight of his rage. His accusations became sharper. "You've changed," he'd spit, his eyes burning with bitterness. With each passing day, he grew more distant, more resentful. I took on paying the children's school fees alone, while he pretended to be broke. His secret gambling losses started to emerge like dark clouds, making me realize just how deep his deception ran. At night, as I lay awake listening to the silence, I knew a storm was coming that would change our lives forever. It was just me and my younger brother now. Our mother had died 4 years before our dad, leaving us to face the world alone. After Dad passed, we discovered he had left behind much more than we ever imagined. Trucks, cattle, cocoa farms, houses, and large sums of cash. There were even things we didn't know existed. We had to sell some cars to share the money with other family members, turning the warm family legacy into a pile of paperwork and tense conversations. In the farmhouse kitchen, my husband paced like a caged animal. His fair skin turned red with frustration. His gray suit rumpled from his restless movements, and his hands waved in sharp, angry gestures. Demanding, "We need that money now," he snapped, his deep voice echoing through the room, slicing into my thoughts. I stood at the stove, stirring soup with shaking hands. My medium-dark skin felt tight with tension, and my brown hair, usually vibrant, was pulled back hastily. The wooden table, once a place of family warmth, now stood as a silent witness to our unraveling. He kept pushing for the rental income from the houses. Insistent, "The company's offer is enough," he argued, his eyes narrowed into slits of desperation. Our kids played nearby, blissfully unaware, their laughter a cruel contrast to the storm brewing between us. Meanwhile, the cocoa farms weighed heavily in my mind, each tree a reminder of my father's legacy. The scent of soup filled the air, but all I could taste was dread. His business failures haunted him like shadows, and with each passing day, his demands grew more desperate and harsh, threatening the fragile peace of our home. Then came the day my brother visited. His calm presence steadied me. His medium-dark skin and neat brown hair made him look like the strong anchor I needed. In his hands, he carried a stack of old letters. "Sirius, we found this," he said quietly, his deep voice holding a tremor of uncertainty. As I unfolded the brittle paper, the words blurred through my tears. Dad had hidden a secret trust fund and hinted at debts he had taken on to protect us. My knees buckled as the reality hit me. All this time, there was a deeper struggle behind his quiet sacrifices. My husband stood nearby, his face drained of color as he eavesdropped. "What else is there?" he muttered under his breath, panic flashing in his eyes. The walls of the farmhouse seemed to close in around us, the creaking floorboards echoing the secrets that now felt like ghosts. The letter even suggested that Dad's death might not have been entirely natural, a whisper of conspiracy that chilled me to the bone. Later that night, I stood in our bedroom, my heart pounding like a drum against my ribs. My hair framed my face, which had transformed from grief-stricken to resolute. My hands clutched the letter like a weapon. "This is mine to protect," I said aloud, my voice unwavering for the first time in years. My husband stood at the doorway, his posture stiff, his skin tight with rage and fear. The air between us crackled with tension. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control, legacy, and the life my father had envisioned for us. I called my brother, my voice steady despite the turmoil. "We'll uncover the truth," I vowed, my words cutting through the heavy silence. Together, we decided to investigate Dad's past and protect the inheritance at all costs. The cocoa farms, once simple patches of land, now felt like sacred ground. As the night wrapped around the farmhouse, I felt a shift inside me, a transformation from a grieving daughter to a fierce guardian ready to fight for her family's honor. In the end, I received GHC 275,000 in cash, 2 houses, several plots of land, and multiple farms. My husband was by my side when it was all officially handed over, his eyes glimmering with an unsettling mix of excitement and greed. My brother and I agreed to manage the cattle and farms together and split any profits that came in. 2 years before all this, my husband had quit his job to start his own business. I had stood by him, investing my own savings and believing in his dream. But despite all the money I poured into it, I never saw a single return. Yet he kept insisting, "The business is fine, just give it time." When I inherited the money, his plan unfolded clearly. "Let's use half for the business, 30% for that other project we discussed, and we can save the rest while waiting for the farm income." His words dripped with persuasion, but I could see the cracks in his facade, the desperation lurking just beneath his smooth tone. After my dad died, it felt like the world had stopped moving. Everything felt empty, like there was a big hole inside me that nothing could fill. I would lie awake at night thinking about all the moments we shared, and my heart felt so heavy that sometimes I thought it might stop beating. Even though I was the one who had lost my father, it seemed like my husband was more focused on my inheritance than my grief. He didn't ask me how I was feeling. He didn't sit with me when I cried. Instead, he started making plans for the money as if it belonged to him. When he first brought it up, I was shocked. We were sitting in the living room, and he suddenly said, "We should use half of the inheritance for the business and 30% for that project we talked about." I stared at him in silence. My eyes were full of tears. I couldn't understand how he could be so focused on money when I was in so much pain. I told him quietly, "I need time to think about it." The truth was, I didn't even want the money. It felt dirty to me. Every time I looked at it, it felt like I had lost my dad in exchange for cash. It didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a curse. When he kept pushing me day after day, I decided to do something quietly. I went to the bank without telling him and invested the money into treasury bills. I wanted to protect it. I wanted to feel safe. After I did that, I felt a little bit stronger, like I had taken back a small part of myself that he was trying to steal. But my husband didn't stop. Every morning he would wake up, look at me with cold eyes, and ask, "What are you going to do with the money?" At first, I tried to ignore him. But his questions grew sharper, and his voice grew louder. It felt like he was drilling a hole into my mind every single day. Then, one morning, after another fight, my brother came to visit. When I saw him, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. He had always been my protector, even when we were kids. His warm smile and gentle voice reminded me that I wasn't alone. He walked in carrying a tray with a cup of tea and handed it to me with steady hands. "We'll handle this together," he said. His voice was strong but gentle, like a warm blanket on a cold night. We sat at the old wooden table in the farmhouse kitchen. The smell of tea mixed with a faint smell of cattle from outside. My brother looked into my eyes and said, "There's something you need to see." He pulled out an old letter from his bag. The paper was yellow and soft from age. My hands trembled as I opened it. As I read, tears started streaming down my face. The letter was from my dad. He had written it before he died. In it, he explained that he had set up a trust fund to protect us and the farms. He had taken on secret debts to keep everything safe from greedy relatives and outsiders. When I finished reading, I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. My dad had been fighting for us even after he was gone. My brother squeezed my hand tightly and said, "It's ours to protect." At that moment, I felt a new strength inside me. I realized I had to fight for my father's legacy, not just for me, but for my children and my brother too. While we were still sitting there, my husband walked into the room. He saw the letter and his eyes widened in shock. His face turned pale as if he had seen a ghost. "What else is there?" he stammered. His voice was shaky, and for the first time, he looked scared. I stood up slowly, my hands still gripping the letter. I felt like a warrior standing up to a dragon. "This is not yours to take," I shouted. My voice was strong and clear, echoing off the wooden walls. My husband glared at me. His suit was wrinkled and his hair was messy. His eyes burned with anger. "You're hiding something from me," he screamed. His voice was sharp and full of hate. He started accusing me of betraying him. He told me that I was changing, that I didn't care about him or our marriage anymore. He said I was selfish and that I only cared about my own family. I took a deep breath and replied calmly, "I am protecting us." I looked at our kids. They were standing in the hallway, their eyes wide and their faces pale. They didn't understand all the words, but they felt the tension in the air. My heart broke for them. Later that night, after my husband stormed out of the house, my brother and I sat down again. We knew we had to do something. "We need to dig deeper," my brother said firmly. He sounded like a soldier ready for battle. He hired an accountant, someone we could trust. The accountant came over a few days later. He was serious and focused, with a stack of papers and a laptop. I gave him all the bank statements I had, every piece of paper I had hidden away in a box under my bed. We spent hours going through them together at the kitchen table. The air was thick with tension. Finally, the accountant looked up at us with wide eyes. "He's in debt," he said quietly. His voice was almost a whisper, but it felt like a bomb going off in the room. I felt the blood drain from my face. I felt dizzy, like the floor had disappeared beneath me. My husband had been lying to me all this time. He had secret loans and business losses that he had never told me about. I remembered all the nights I cried alone in bed while he slept soundly. I remembered all the times he told me I didn't understand business, that I was stupid for questioning him. At that moment, I realized that I had been living in a house built on lies. After that day, my husband's true colors started to show even more. Every morning, he would ask the same question as if he was stuck on repeat. "What are you doing with the money?" I finally told him, "The farms and cattle need money too, so I'm saving it for them." But he didn't stop. He started giving me long lectures. He would talk for hours about how business worked, what I should invest in, and what I was supposedly doing wrong. He said things like, "You don't listen to me anymore. It's like you married me just because of the money. You don't want us to grow together. It's always about you now." His words cut me deeply, but I refused to let him see me break. I knew that showing weakness would only give him more power over me. I started spending more time with my brother. We would walk through the cocoa farms together, feeling the soft dirt under our feet and smelling the fresh leaves. We talked about the past, about our parents, and about our dreams for the future. Every tree felt like a memory. I remembered planting some of them with my dad when I was a child. He would hold my tiny hands and guide me gently. Those moments felt like treasures now. Sometimes, I sat alone in the farmhouse at night, listening to the wind blowing through the trees and the distant sound of cattle moving. I felt lonely, but also strong. I knew my dad would be proud of me for standing up for what was right. The more I thought about my husband's lies, the more determined I became. I realized that love without trust isn't love at all. A marriage without respect is nothing but a prison. My brother and I started making plans. We talked about hiring more workers for the farms, investing in better equipment, and fixing up the farmhouse. We wanted to make it a place full of life again, a place our dad would have loved to see. I also started thinking more about my kids. I wanted them to grow up in a home full of love and honesty, not lies and manipulation. I wanted them to learn that family means protecting each other, even when it's hard. One evening, I cooked dinner for my children and my brother. We sat together at the big wooden table, laughing and sharing stories. For a moment, it felt like we were whole again, like the pain and betrayal had faded into the background. But even in those happy moments, I knew the fight wasn't over. My husband was still there, still trying to control me, still trying to get the money. I could see the greed in his eyes every time he looked at me. I decided to move forward step by step. I stopped sharing any details with him. I focused on my children, my brother, and the farms. Slowly, I started to rebuild my life, one small act of courage at a time. I found strength in small things, the smell of fresh cocoa pods, the sound of my children playing, the touch of the cool evening breeze on my face. Every day, I reminded myself, I am more than his wife. I am a daughter, a mother, a sister. I am a woman with a legacy to protect. I knew that this journey was far from over. But for the first time in a long while, I felt hope. I felt like I could breathe again. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could create a future full of light instead of shadows. My husband kept telling me that his business was fine. He said he was just waiting for the right time to grow and expand. He painted big pictures with his words, talking about new branches, big contracts, and huge profits. But all of this only existed in his imagination. While he talked about dreams, I was the one paying the real bills. I paid for the kids' school fees. I paid for their books, their clothes, their lunches, and their field trips. I even paid for things like birthday cakes and school activities. We had 2 wonderful children. At first, I agreed to help financially because I believed in his business dream. I thought it was just temporary. But 2 years went by, and I was still covering almost everything. He didn't step up. He just sat back and let me carry the weight. Not only did I handle school fees, but every small and unexpected expense too. Doctor visits, repairs around the house, even my husband's own personal needs sometimes. I didn't complain loudly. I told myself I was doing it for my children. I reminded myself that I could afford it, so I should do it. But deep inside, each expense felt like a heavy stone on my heart. I felt alone in a partnership that was supposed to be equal. One day, the accountant returned to the farmhouse. His face looked serious and heavy, as if he had been carrying a big secret. He carried a thick file in his hands. My brother and I stood beside the wooden desk, waiting. The accountant opened the file and took a deep breath. "He forged a loan in your name," he said in a quiet, careful voice. I felt my entire body freeze. It was like the blood in my veins turned into ice. My knees felt weak, and I gripped the edge of the table to keep myself from falling. "What?" I asked, my voice shaking. The accountant nodded. "Yes. He forged your signature and took a big loan in your name. He used it to pay off gambling debts and tried to cover other business losses. Worse, he tied it to your father's hidden trust fund as security." My brother slammed his hand on the table in anger. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, but I forced myself to stand strong. At that moment, my husband barged into the room. His hair was messy, his suit wrinkled, and his face pale with fear and anger. "It was for us," he shouted. His voice was loud and desperate. "I just needed to fix everything. You don't understand. I did it for our family." I looked at him with disbelief. "For us? Or for you?" I whispered. He tried to walk closer to me, but my brother stepped in front, blocking his path. "You betrayed me," I said, my voice trembling with both anger and pain. The children peeked around the hallway corner. Their eyes were wide and filled with fear. They didn't understand everything, but they felt the tension, and it scared them. I felt something inside me shift again. A surge of energy rushed through me, making my heart beat faster and stronger. I stood up straighter and wiped my tears away. "This ends now," I said. My voice was firm and loud enough to echo in the farmhouse. My brother stood beside me, his presence giving me extra strength. The accountant gathered his papers and nodded in support. "You don't control me anymore," I said as I looked directly into my husband's eyes. For the first time, I saw fear and weakness in his face. I hugged my children tightly. I could feel their little hearts beating against mine, and I promised them silently that I would protect them no matter what. The next day, I called my lawyer. She arrived at the farmhouse looking strong and confident, her eyes focused and her movements quick. "We'll protect your assets," she said, her voice calm but powerful. We sat at the big wooden table and went through all the paperwork. Every line, every detail, every small number. We checked everything together. My husband tried to stop us. He yelled, "You can't do this," and pounded his fist on the table. But I didn't move. I stayed strong and kept signing each document. As we reviewed Dad's will, we discovered he had made a secret amendment before he died. This amendment protected me from exactly this situation. It blocked my husband from making any legal claims on the inheritance and the farms. I felt tears come to my eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude. My father had thought so far ahead. He had protected me even after he was gone. I signed the papers with a steady hand. When I put down the pen, it felt like I had dropped a heavy burden I had been carrying for years. My children stood close, watching me with wide, hopeful eyes. I saw pride in their faces. It gave me even more courage. My husband stood silently now, his eyes empty. For the first time, he looked small and powerless. But the least he could have done was show appreciation. Instead, he demanded more because he assumed I had more money hidden somewhere. One day, a company approached me to rent one of the houses I had inherited. I looked over their offer carefully and didn't agree with their terms. I told them no. They promised to come back with better terms, but they never did. My husband kept insisting that I should accept the first offer. The money would help the business, he said. I just need a little push. But I stood firm. I refused to sign away something that was important to me and my family just to feed his endless greed. When I said no, I saw it in his eyes. He realized that his control over me was completely gone. I turned away and focused on my children, my brother, and my family's future. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. I knew deep in my heart that my husband's business wasn't really okay. He loved to talk about expanding it, about opening new branches, and about making huge profits. But I saw the truth. I saw the bills he hid. I saw the disappointment in his eyes when another big opportunity failed. His dreams were just castles in the air, pretty stories he told himself to avoid facing reality. And because I wouldn't give him my inheritance, his anger grew stronger every day. Little disagreements turned into shouting matches. A simple question about dinner could become an explosive fight. He stopped eating the food I cooked, saying it didn't taste right. He would throw away plates of food and complain loudly. He refused to help the kids with their homework or play with them like he used to. He started to act like a stranger in our own home. I watched my children's faces change. Their bright smiles faded into worried frowns. They began tiptoeing around the house, afraid to upset him. Seeing that broke something inside me. One day, the lawyer returned to the farmhouse. She looked confident and calm, holding a thick folder in her hands. The moment she stepped inside, I felt a shift in the air, like a long-awaited breeze clearing away the heavy clouds. We all gathered in the living room. My brother stood next to me, and my children sat quietly on the couch, holding each other's hands. The lawyer opened her folder and looked at me with a warm, proud smile. "The assets are yours," she said clearly and firmly. Her voice echoed like music in my ears. I felt relief rush through my entire body. I picked up the pen and signed the papers. With every signature, I felt myself stepping into a new life, free from his lies and manipulation. When I looked up, my husband stood by the doorway. His face was pale, his suit wrinkled and hanging on him like an old costume. "You'll regret this," he screamed, his voice shaking and full of bitterness. But I didn't feel afraid anymore. His words felt like empty threats, powerless and small. He stormed out of the farmhouse, slamming the door so hard that the walls shook. But instead of fear, I felt a wave of peace wash over me. My children ran to me and hugged me tightly. Their faces glowed with relief and happiness. My brother joined us, wrapping his arms around us all. The farmhouse, once filled with tension and fear, now felt warm and safe again. The walls seemed to breathe with us, welcoming this new chapter. A few days later, he returned. But this time, he looked different. He wasn't shouting or throwing things. His suit was neat, his hair combed, and his eyes looked tired and hollow. He stood at the door and looked at me, his hands empty. "I was wrong," he said softly, almost in a whisper. "I ruined everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to try to fix things. I want to rebuild the trust." I listened in silence. Part of me felt sorry for him. He looked like a broken man. But I also remembered every tear I had cried, every night I had stayed awake worrying, every time I had to comfort my children after his outbursts. I looked at my children. Their eyes were clear and strong now. I looked at my brother. He shook his head slowly, reminding me of everything I had fought for. "I choose separation," I said. My voice didn't tremble. It was steady, strong, and final. His shoulders dropped. He nodded, knowing there was nothing more to say. He turned and walked out slowly, without another word. I watched him leave, feeling a strange sense of closure. It felt like closing the final page of a very painful book. I turned to my children and opened my arms. They ran into my embrace, and we held each other tightly. My brother stepped forward and joined us. We stood there, together, as a family, whole, safe, and free. Years passed. The farmhouse transformed into a bright, joyful home. The walls were covered with my children's artwork, colorful drawings of cocoa trees, cattle, and happy family moments. My children grew into strong, thoughtful, and kind teenagers. Their eyes shone with wisdom far beyond their years. They helped me run the cocoa farms, took care of the cattle, and excelled in school. My hair, once vibrant brown, now carried gentle streaks of gray. I wore them proudly, each strand a symbol of the battles I had survived and the wisdom I had gained. My hands, once soft and delicate, had become strong and skilled from years of working on the farm and raising my children. One evening, we held a family reunion at the farmhouse. My brother stood beside me, his face full of pride and warmth. I looked at my children, now young adults, and my heart overflowed with gratitude. "You gave me strength," I said, my voice shaking slightly with emotion. My eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of joy and relief. They hugged me tightly. "Thank you for teaching us to be strong and brave," they whispered. On the table nearby sat a framed photo of my dad next to a cocoa pod. The frame, made from smooth, dark wood, shone warmly under the lights. I felt his presence in the room, watching over us, smiling proudly. I realized that real wealth wasn't in the money, the houses, or the land. Real wealth was the love we shared, the respect we held for one another, and the strength we found in family. My brother looked at me and nodded. We didn't need words to understand what we had been through together. We had faced storms and come out stronger. The wooden chandelier above us glowed softly, casting a gentle light over our heads. Outside, the stars shone brightly in the calm night sky. The farm, once a place of grief and conflict, now felt like a hymn, a soft song of love and resilience. We had not just survived. We had grown, transformed, and rebuilt. The farmhouse, once a battlefield, had become a warm home full of laughter, hope, and peace. Moral lesson of the story. True wealth lies not in material gain but in love and self-respect. When you choose to honor yourself and your family, you build a legacy no one can destroy. What a powerful stand. Would you support her choice? Hit that like button, subscribe for more gripping tales, and tell us in the comments, where in the world are you rooting from? We adore your love.